everybody. As you can see from the screen, and if you've not been to one of these before, I'm Sarah Bennett, and I'm delighted that today I am welcoming Georgina Troy and Rachel Burton, and we're just going to have a little chat to you today about our new books. Oh, Mina's here. Hello, Mina. She's always on time. So I'll go first, and then we'll do a little round robin if that's okay. So I'm going to talk to you all today about my new book, which is called Where We Belong. So look, I already said to you guys, didn't I, that I'll go the wrong way. I always go the wrong way with my camera. So this is the first book in a new series for me. Grace is here. Hi, Grace. And we've got a new location this time. We're in the heart of the Cotswolds, in a lovely country estate. That was, I thought, a good setting for me because I can put lots and lots of different sort of sub-locations within that and have lots of, you know, good ideas and places and stories to explore within it. So this is all about the Travers family who own and run the estate. And the heroine of this book is Hope, and she's the youngest of the family. She needs a bit of space, so she wants to build a little place of her own on the estate. Only the first sort of bucket of soil, they hit some ruins. And so who's she going to call but the very handsome local archaeologist, Cameron. So he comes along, and while they're digging around and trying to find out what's going on with the ruins, they also start to uncover lots of things that are going on in Hope's family. So lots of secrets coming up. Quite a difficult time for her and other members of the family. But as usual, lots of love, lots of community, lots of resolutions, hopefully, but not all in the first book. So that's it, really. So Rachel, you're going to talk to us about the lovely, and I've banged on about this book so much, and I'm not on commission. I'm not on commission.
No, honestly, she's not.
But it's called The Last Party at Silverton Hall. So over to you. Why don't you tell us all about it?
So The Last Party at Silverton Hall is a dual timeline time slip novel. It's set partly in the early 1950s and partly in the present day. It's 2019. Because I still can't face writing anything that's set after 2020. I'm afraid it's too traumatizing. So it's about a young lady called Isabel who inherits her grandmother's house in 2019 in the modern day timeline. And she was very close to her grandmother. Her grandmother brought her up. She's kind of estranged from her mum, and she is very disillusioned with life. She's an art teacher who really hates teaching, and she arrives back in Silverton Bay with these great plans of living in her grandmother's house, and discovers that it needs an awful lot of work before it's really livable in. So it's partly the story of her renovating this house, and of course partly during the renovation process discovering photographs that she never knew existed, that tell a story of her grandmother's life that she wasn't aware of. So the flashbacks, the 1952 part of the story, tells the story of her grandmother, Vivian, who met her husband, Max, in the Great Smog of 1952, which, if you're fans of The Crown, you might remember that there's an episode, I think it's in the first series, of the Great Smog, and how absolutely devastating it was for London, and how it killed thousands of people, and was the precursor for the Clean Air Act, and the slow trying to stop using coal as the main form of fuel in this country. So it follows, the second story follows Vivian through the early years of her marriage, unraveling the secrets as Isabel discovers them in the modern day timeline. And there is obviously, of course, a love interest. Isabel meets someone she knew as a child, a man called Nick, who's supposed to be a doctor, but isn't. So he has his own story, his own trauma, his own mystery. And because he flips houses for a living now, so helps her with the renovation. But of course, he has his own story too as to why he's not followed his dream of becoming a doctor.
It's lovely. I love it so much.
On the Norfolk coast. So Silverton Hall is in a place called Silverton Bay, which is on the Norfolk coast, and it's a fictional town, but it's based on, those of you that know the Norfolk coast, it's based on Hunstanton, which is one of my favorite places in the world, actually.
So, you saved, you've shared some lovely pictures.
I've shared some pictures on my Instagram of Hunstanton and the lighthouse, and you can see the lighthouse is quite prominent in the book, and the beach. So so I've shared some pictures on my Instagram account that show that give you an idea of the real place that inspired the story.
And Georgina, you take us to Jersey, which is kind of, I love Jersey because it's sort of, it's familiar, but it's different. Yes. That kind of makes sense. So it's kind of, it's a sort of a really sort of in between type place, isn't it? It's really unique.
It really is. I know when my children went to university, they were both put with, I think they were called island students, but they were actually put with international students, which I didn't actually understand at all. But then having gone to England a lot more because they were both there, I realized that actually, yes, we're very European. I know we're all sort of, which is, it's not surprising, I suppose, in the fact that we, the islands are in the Bay of St. Malo, so we're closer to France than we are to England. And I think over here we think of ourselves as very British because we are British, but we're actually not English. We're British, but we're actually part of our bailiwick. So I assumed we were all very like that, but then I forget that, in England, you probably don't have a lot of your roads with French names and things like that. And it has got a very much of a French influence over here. Yeah, I think we don't realize until, we actually come to England a bit more and actually see the difference. Yeah. So
it's one of the things I really like. Sorry. Yeah, it's one of the things I really like, that it's that I get to know a slightly different life and to sort of explore the island as we go through the story as well. That's one of the things that I like.
Thank you. Yeah, I like doing that. Well, I thought when I first wrote my first book set here, I was in the New Writers Scheme and in the RNA, the Romantic Novelist Association New Writers Scheme, and you have a book critiqued every year. And a reader who critiqued my book said, you don't actually make the most of the island. I think to you it's just very your everyday, but to people who don't live there, they might be interested to actually find out more about it because it is actually different. So I then did that, and then all my Georgina Troy books are actually set here. And the book I'm talking about today is Love Begins on the Boardwalk. It's part of my Boardwalk series, and this series it was originally about 4 friends, but we've got a 5th brand new book. This is a relaunch of a book, and a 5th brand new book's actually coming out in September. So for people who have actually read the series, there is a brand new book coming at the end. But it's about these friends who live on this fictional boardwalk. So it's a fictional village on the northwest of the island. That's where I live. And the boardwalk is a mixture of 2 places. St. Bullard's Promenade and Greve de Lec near where I live. So I picture it as Greve de Lec for the most part. And this is Bella's story. Bella she's a part-time hand model. So she goes away on shoots and obviously has to get close to people because she has to put her arms around them to like pretend they're hands. And she comes across this very spoiled, horrible celebrity who then pitches up later on in the book, Megan Knight, when she is sent to the island. And so Bella has to sort of get close to her again and is not very pleased, basically. Bella also is a part-time, she sells antiques part-time from her little blue cottage, the Beehive, halfway along the boardwalk. And she also rents out 2 of her rooms to make ends meet. One to Jack. Jack he's the twin brother of Sasha from the first book, Summer Sundays. Summer Sundays is a cafe and is at the one end of the boardwalk. And Bella has a secret crush on Jack, but Jack just sees her as his sister's best friend. or so she thinks.
Oh, my favorite trope. Honestly, I love that. I do. I love my best friend's brother. It's such a great trope.
Because it's like a no, but it's like, oh, and he sees her as a friend, that sort of thing. So so she rents her room to him, and she also rents the other room to Alessandro from the first book. He's an archaeologist, funnily enough. And he also runs, he also runs a gelateria on the boardwalk as well. So this is Bella's story. She's also got her mum. Her mum had her very young and then left her with her grandmother to be brought up because she needed to find herself. And Claire has been away for many, many years, finding herself, traveling, having generally a lot of parties and great fun. And then one day there's a knock on the door, and Bella opens the door, and it's her mother, come to get to know her daughter properly. And so there's a lot of different things happening in the book. And you meet the other two friends from the other two books and from the book as well. So it's
lovely. It's such a really lovely location. And again, it's one of those spaces, a bit like My Country Estate. It's a brilliant thing because you can add lots and lots of different sort of businesses and ideas and explore lots of different themes and things like that. So yeah, I've been really enjoying it. It's a lovely series. So congratulations. And I'm very excited that there's going to be 5 books now, not just the 4.
Yes.
So I'm just going to say hi to everybody who's joined us. Feel free to ask a question. I'll mention it now. We're all going to we'll do it separately, but each of us is going to give away a paperback of our book. So anybody who makes a comment or asks a question, and if you're watching this on catch up, don't worry that you've missed out. You can sort of just leave a comment, let us know that you were here, ask a question if anything comes up during the discussion that you'd like to know a little bit more about, and then we'll pop back. We'll give it sort of 24, 48 hours, and then we'll pop back and we'll have a look through the comments, and we'll pick a winner from there. And each of us, so there'll be 3 winners in total. I hope that makes sense. Does that make sense? That makes sense to me.
Yes, it makes sense to me.
So, yeah, great. Okay, that's great. Lovely. So I just wanted to get that out of the way because I always forget. So one of the things I was sort of interested in is because I always make up my locations because then I can do what I want with it. And then I can't be told that I'm wrong. So I find it really interesting that you both use sort of real places for inspiration. But do you still kind of have a slightly fictional twist on it so that you can move things around as you want?
Yeah.
So
I play fast and loose with geography. Yeah. I play very fast and loose with geography. I've probably the only place where I don't is when I set books in Cambridge, because I'm really funny about that. Because I was born in Cambridge, studied in Cambridge, worked in Cambridge for years and years. I know the city like so well. So that's probably I'm really specific about the geography of that. I've set, I think, 3 books in Cambridge. But
I can always tell with your Cambridge books that you know every inch of where you're talking about. It's really, it's like having a little guided tour around. So I know that you know exactly what you're talking about and the places that you're describing.
I've set 2 books in York. I've set 2 books in York, and I'm a little bit less fastidious about the geography of York. I don't know it as well, because I've just not been up here as long. But also, the 2 books, both of them needed something to happen in them quicker than it would have happened if you'd actually been walking from that part of York to the other. York's small, but it's not that small.
Not that small.
So yeah, that is on the whole. I do, and then I've got a book set on the Isle of Wight, and I have had comments about that one that this wouldn't happen if you really lived here. It's like,
I actually had that from a reviewer. I mean, I've lived here most of my life, and a reviewer, I think it was on NetGalley, actually pointed out, wrongly I might add, clearly this person has never visited Jersey, because they would not have miles per hour, they would have kilometers per hour. It's like, hello, I actually have been here. You know, I mean, I live here. I do know what it is. But I love when you have people pointing out where you're going wrong and you've clearly never been there before.
I did, you know, the Isle of Wight was a bit, and then the made up locations are always based on somewhere, but they're not, when I've created a made up place like I have with the last party at Silverton Hall, which is based on somewhere real, you probably wouldn't recognize it unless I told you, put it that way. It allows me a lot more flexibility with location, geography, number of people who live there, that kind of thing. So that's so it very much depends on the book whether I set it somewhere real or whether I create somewhere new, and depends what the book, you know, how significant the setting of the book is, if that makes sense. You know,
no, that does make sense. Yeah.
I think it's the flexibility that actually is the thing, like you just said there. I mean, this series, like I say, it's set on the west of the island where I live, but my series that the first two are out now, Sunshine Island series, they're actually set on the east of the island, and they're set in a real place, which is Gorey Pier, which is below this beautiful Montorgueil Castle. But the actual places on the actual houses actually exist. The terrace houses and restaurants and pubs exist along the pier, but not the ones in my book. So I have, you know, they're slightly different, or they have different names, obviously different people living them and that sort of thing. And that's where I have my characters living. But yeah, so it's a mixture of fiction and real, with using the real places in that way.
Yeah.
Well, the only time I used a real place was I had a character go into Exeter. She went to a relate sort of counselling thing, and I had to stop on her journey home. She was walking back to the station, and I'd done a little Google Maps, and there was a park right near the station. So I had her, there was a phone call, so I had her go into the park. And then I think it was Trevor Williams, lovely Trevor, he writes cozy mysteries and he writes romances and things like that, who was the one who pointed out to me that she would probably had a bit of a torrid time in there with all the drug addicts. That's it. I'm not doing
real places ever again. No, I do try and make them places I've been to and kind of had a poke around and make sure they're not.
To go and sit on a bench for 5 minutes and take a really important phone call because she was on her way to the train, and it was a really good location. Well, I thought it was a really good location, but you know, you live and learn.
Yes, that's so true.
Oh. So now I just make it all up. So now that's it. I'm not doing anything like that. So
I know that what I had to do with one of my books, I think it was the second Sunshine Island book, I had set this one part of the book in Gorey Castle. It's really called, as I said, Montorgueil Castle. And I'd set it there and this event and this, that, and the other. And then I thought, you know, I haven't actually been there for quite a while. I better just go and actually have a look. And I had to change it slightly because I didn't realize there were so many steps to get up there. So, you know, these characters had to carry things up. It obviously had to be changed and adapted to actually be more realistic, because I'd sort of tried to go on my memory and actually, no, it was far more exhausting, probably because I'm older now. I don't know.
Right. So we've got a couple of questions. So I think we'll just dip into those. So, lovely Judy Lee. Now, here's a leading question. Does writing energize or exhaust you? Yes.
Both. All of the above.
At the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I'm really in it, when I'm really, really, really in the heart of the story, and it's kind of, the words are racing faster than I can kind of keep up with them, which doesn't always happen, but those moments when it does, that's such an adrenaline rush for me. But then when you get to the end of it, it's a real kind of, there's a real drop afterwards, isn't there? And one of the most tiring things I have to say, actually, which shouldn't be, and maybe I shouldn't say, but is actually release day. I think it's kind of you're so sort of wound up beforehand. You try, even, you know, this isn't my first book by a long shot, but you still want it to be well received, and you want it to do well, and you hope that people are going to enjoy it. So actually, I find it
also
quite hard.
About release day. The other thing about release day, it's the day you let go of it. So
Yes.
I know you guys release books more frequently than I do, but usually when I release a book, we're probably nearing up to on release day, we're nearing the 2-year mark of me first starting that book, because that's what my schedule is like. It takes me about 6 months to a year to write a book. And then there's edits and everything like that. I start about 2 years before I know it's going to be released. But I've been working and living with this book for a really, really long time. And like you said, I'm going through peaks where I just love it and it excites me, and I can't wait to finish work and get back to it, because I balance writing with a day job, which is why my release schedule is quite lenient. And there's times when it just exhausts you and you don't want to go near it. But then release day, you're letting it go. You're sending that out into the world, and it's no longer your book on release day. It's your reader's book then. There's nothing to do with you anymore. And that is a really, it's a huge kind of letting go moment. So that in itself is, while it's quite cathartic, it's also absolutely shattering. And I think that's why publication day can be quite an exhausting day.
But I think also emotionally, most of the time, I've moved on because I'm in a new book.
Yeah.
And so my feelings and my emotions are invested in my new characters. And as much as I love the book, that and I do love the characters in this book, I'm also, although they're still with me because it's part of the series. I'm very much focused on
the next
book. on the new book, and it's like you say, isn't it? This is the back end of the experience for us, and the front end of the experience
for everyone else. Yeah,
and they're all kind of like, oh, I love this, and this, and I'm like, did I write that?
I can't remember writing
sure?
that.
Because you do. I think sometimes I'm like
total blank about characters' names. I have sometimes because I wrote it a year ago, and I'm writing another. I'm coming towards the end of drafting the next book for 2024 at the moment. So it's and also Isabel who's the main character in The Last Party at Silverton Hall, wasn't called Isabel in the first draft. So I keep calling her Annabelle, and obviously that means nothing to anyone because she's not called Annabelle anymore.
It's quite confusing.
Nightmare, aren't they? To remember. First of all, I don't feel like I've actually got the character until I've chosen a name. And then I've had to change the name, which I've had to do on the book I'm actually working on at the moment. I have to, every time I type the name, think, is it this one or is it this one? Because I've had to change the name and it doesn't obviously sit right. And I remember my first interview, actually talking about publication day. One of my first interviews I had after one of my books came out, and naturally the interview said, so tell me about your character. So what's her name? I think, and I literally went blank. I had no idea. It was complete blank because I had written another book since then, and like you say, you were invested in the emotional stuff, and then I learned that you have to actually think about things a little bit before. Well,
I've actually, because I've sort of made some notes before we came on, and I thought, well, I'll make sure I've written down your main characters as well in case anybody has a blank. But I also wrote my own down because I thought
you never know, do you, what might happen?
And do you find that you have a particular names that you keep going back to that you don't mean to?
One of the reasons that I had to stop her being called Annabelle, there's not an Annabelle in this book, but there's an Annabelle in the next book, and that suits her much more than it suited this character. So and variations on Edward, Edgar, Edwin. I do that all the time. There's so many Eds.
I'm a Jack.
In my books.
I tend to. There's a Jack in this book, a Jackson in the book that's out next month, and I've noticed I like girls with P names. So we've got Piper in the first one of the books. I've then got Phoebe in that, but that's a different book. And then I've got another P. I know. So I thought I've actually got to stop this.
Pick another letter.
Well, I've called characters the same, sort of minor characters the same name, and I do normally try and catch it. But there are actually two characters in in the Mermaid's Point series in the village that have got the same name. But then I thought, well, people do. It's not a really unusual name. People do have the same name, so that's okay. But they would already both appeared separately in a book, and then when they both happened to be mentioned in the same book, and I thought, well, I've got two of you.
Yeah, because they become real people, don't they? So
they do.
And you can differentiate between somebody, two people called the same thing. Yeah.
So let's see what else we've got here.
I think Bethan asked a question.
Oh, Bethan, what profession would you like to do if not writing? Would you take up one of the professions of the characters in any of your books? Well, one of the things I like about writing is that I get to play at doing these jobs, not really doing them, but the fun bits of doing them. So I don't know. Well, they all sound nice on paper, but they all, when I sit and think about them, then I think, no, I don't want to do it.
I mean, it's difficult.
Well, there's days I don't even want to be a writer. There's days I just want I'd quite like to just retire and not do anything for a while.
Just sleep for a while, maybe. Be nice. No,
I think it's kind of Sorry, that's what I like, that you can kind of play, can't you? So you can run a cafe and a bed and breakfast, and
I was going to say,
think about it and think about all the stuff that's behind it, and cafe, antiques, dabbling in antiques, that sort of thing. And in one of the other books, she helps run a secondhand bookshop, which is like, heaven, of course.
So
we've all had a bookshop. We've all had a bookshop.
We've all had a bookshop. Yeah.
In different books, we've all had it. It's a fantasy.
I have another job. I'm not a full-time writer, so I work in conveyancing, which is the lawyer you use when you buy or sell your house. So it's not glamorous, and I don't recommend it. But in terms of my book, I suppose I've had a bookshop. But I'm also very aware of how incredibly hard it is to run an independent bookshop and how difficult it is to make ends meet. And obviously had a tea room as well. So now I worked as a waitress for years and years and years when I was studying and qualifying, and I know how hard cafes are to run. It feels like it'd be a lot of fun when you're writing it, because basically my cafe owner, she doesn't seem to do much actual work. She sits around with all the customers chatting and having various disasters and a big love affair. But I know that it's
in an ideal world,
isn't it? So I guess yes and no.
Yeah, I guess if I could run a cafe like that where I basically sat around.
Well, I didn't do any work. Someone else did it all.
Yeah.
And you sat around chatting. Oh, that'd be all right, wouldn't it? But yes, so in Fantasyland, yes. In the real world, probably no. Actually, probably the nearest is Isabel in my most recent novel, The Last Party at Silverton Hall. She was a teacher, and that was what I almost did. So yeah, I guess almost.
Well, I have to be a bit careful. Because I sort of use information, from jobs that I've done, and I've sort of worked within the construction industry. So when I was writing Where We Belong, they're sort of setting up the site for the archaeological dig. And also she's got the building team that are in there for when she was going to have her house built and things like that. And I have to be so careful, because otherwise, I'll get a comment from my editor going, do we really need to know about risk assessments and method statements? And I'm like, yes, we do. We really do. Let me tell you, let me tell you
I do this.
Compound. This is important.
This is the thing about when you write historicals, you do so much research. I want to put all that in. I want to give you the scientific reason why smog happens, right? And I want to write 7 pages on it. Because I learned that, and you're going to damn well learn it as well.
I'm like that because I've got a gin distillery, and I'm like, right, I'm going to take you through the entire process of how you make gin, and it's like, fair enough.
I know. And when you research something like that, and you kind of need to research it to know your characters, especially historically, I think you really need to know how they're feeling about this thing. So you really need to know about it, but your reader doesn't need to know all that.
No.
But it's hard. It's like,
if you would like to know about how smog happened, I can do some sort of booklet.
Do a slideshow. I do a 50-slide PowerPoint presentation on the history of the London
already. Yeah.
But no, I do. It's really, it's a real kind of difficult balance, isn't it? But I did get a bit of a, do we really need another health and safety briefing? And I'm like, yes. No, I can't take that out. Sorry. No. But yeah. What else have we got? Oh, Valerie says all the books sound amazing. Would like to visit some of these places.
Oh, thank you.
I kind of wish my locations were real sometimes.
I wish your locations were real.
Oh, thank you.
Definitely.
So yeah. Oh, hello. Lots and lots of people. Ian, is it difficult to leave writing a series? Yes and no. I think I know when I'm done. I think that's, you know, I have a sort of set idea, and it always sort of I always get comments from readers saying, will there be another book? You know, what's going to happen next? And it's like, well, that's up to you, isn't it? I've given you these people, and I've given you this community, and they've got their happy ending. So now it's up to you. It's whatever happens in your imagination. You can tell yourself the story of what happens with them next. And I think that's part of the joy of us, you know, of a good series in a good location. You can picture yourself there. You can kind of think, yeah, you know, I'm there and I'm going to this and I'm going to this event and that event. And yeah, so for me, the characters kind of live on in people's imagination, and every time a new reader picks up a book and experiences their story, they'll have a slightly different take on it. So it's like a new life for them. But I don't ever want to go back. I think it's unless I had a completely new story to tell, and it would have to be new characters, because you know, people think they want more, but you don't really want more, because what can I do? You know, if I put, you'll want some drama, and you'll want some emotion, and you know, you'll want some conflict, but I can't come back and deliver new conflict into those relationships, because that betrays the story that you've already had and the story that I've already told you. So, well, yeah, and I just kind of, I want to you know, look at new places and stretch my imagination and explore something new and build a new place. So yeah, I mean, you know, I can't imagine sort of going back to Butterfly Cove. My goodness,
Butterfly Cove. So
I know. How many years ago was that? I started writing this.
Is that your first one?
Yeah.
2017.
2017.
No,
yeah, well, I was writing them in 2017. So yeah. So it's yeah. So that's kind of, you know, 6-7 years ago now, and it's you know, so it's lovely that if you pick the book up and you read it yesterday and it's all fresh in your mind, and you're like, you know, so then I'll get a question from somebody and I'm like, oh my goodness. And I'm like, really? Yeah, love. No, that sounds great.
I thought I was probably done with Boardwalk series, but I haven't actually done a 5th book. But that was, I think, because there was still another story, obviously, to tell that I just hadn't thought of before.
Yeah, so, but if you've got another character that's there, that's kind of that you can do.
I did, and I actually didn't see that at first, actually. And it was my editor at Boardwalk saying, have you considered actually doing a 5th book, because there's this character, whatever. And I wasn't sure about going back, because thought, what will I write? And it was actually such a joy to write that 5th book, because I thought I'd forgotten everything, because I have a memory like a sieve. I can't remember anything. But as soon as I started writing the book and planning it, you know, and going through what I was going to write and doing my initial outline, I thought, oh, you know, my brain started racing. It was actually exciting. It was like actually visiting old friends again. And I thought it was going to be difficult, but it wasn't. I found it, I loved writing that book. And it sort of, didn't tell itself, but it actually was far, far easier than I actually thought it would be, because I suppose, like with friends, I just sort of stepped back and actually was getting to know them again and remembering things about them and stuff like that. I really enjoyed it. So yeah, I don't know if it's hard. I think sometimes you're done with the series, so you're actually okay, that, like you say, the story is done and I'm happy to now move on. Yes, I suppose it depends where it is for you, probably. Yeah, whether you're happy to let it go yet or not. Good question, Ian. Thank you.
So, here we go. What have we got? Grace wants to know, what's your favourite part of the writing process?
God, none of it.
Being done with it.
Literally, I hate it all. Oh, it being done. When it's done. When I send the final edit back to my editor, then that is, honestly, that's the best bit for me, because then it's like, I've done it again. Every time I start a new book, I sit there and I know I have no idea how I'm going to do this. I do think I'm just finished writing what will be my 9th published novel, but is the 10th novel that I've written, because one of my books never got published. And while I was writing that, I was still Googling, how long should a chapter be? How, when should Act 2 start? It's like, I don't know. Even though I've done it so many times, I'm still convinced I can't do it. So once it's done, that's the best bit, because it's done. And it's amazing. And that's just such a wonderful, joyous feeling that I've done it again. And I've done it on time.
I see people say, "Oh, I love the drafting process. I love the editing process." And I'm like, "You're a liar."
I've got structural edits coming next week for a book, and I'm terrified, because you think, "Oh, I might have to rewrite this entire book." Yes,
waiting for that edit letter. So,
I know. You do convince yourself, don't you? Well, how many times do I WhatsApp you, Rachel, going, and you're like,
"Oh, my edits are due today. How terrible will they be?
Are we going to have this same conversation again?" And then I'm like,
I think you do, though. I think it's actually probably part of your process without you realizing it. I mean, I'm actually about 30,000 words into my 25th novel, writing, not published. And I was saying to a friend of mine, not this book, the previous book, said, "Oh, I don't think I know how to write a book. And I don't think I can do this. And I really think I can't do this." And she said, "We have this every time." This is my friend Kelly Clayton said, "Every time we have this, every time you don't know how to write a book, every time you think you can't possibly do it, every time it's never going to happen, there are no words to actually in your head to write it, and every time you manage to get to the end of the draft and you actually do okay. So don't worry too much." But I didn't realize I did that every single time I write a book. It's madness.
Yeah.
Every time
I do it, it's like, I hate this. I hate this. I hate it. I hate it. And it's all the time. And I don't really hate it, or I wouldn't keep doing it. But hating it is part of my process. Hating it is how I get it done.
Yeah. I think if you're complacent about it, then that's when you don't care. So I think that when we say we hate it, it's more that we want it to be good. We want
love
it
and
to
hate
be,
are two sides of the same coin.
So
it's
really,
everyone doubts themselves, and
they do.
You just don't think. I've had several reviews about my most recent book saying it's the best book I've written, from people who've read all my books.
Oh, lovely.
And both my husband and my dad said that as well. And they're quite, even though they're my husband and my dad, they don't just say nice stuff to me for the sake of it.
They can actually be the most honest, can't they?
Quite so they and I was having a really hard time when I was actually writing that book personally. So to me, it's never going to be a book I absolutely love, because it kind of reminds me of stuff that was going on that wasn't great. So your own perception of the book, because you've been thinking about it for so long, every meticulous detail of the damn thing, it's very hard to come out of the process.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Sometimes you do with a book. There's a couple of my books that I love and I will always love. But it's very hard, because there are always points that are so hard and so difficult, and you don't want to do them. Like that final read through. So seriously, I've got to read it again. I've read it 3,798 times.
Yeah.
Let's make it around, But yeah, it's not meant to be easy. I don't think.
No.
I think my favorite bit though is that me, that I don't know about you, but my first 30,000 words is literally like wading through treacle, and then suddenly something clicks, and it's as if I've written myself into those characters' minds or whatever.
Yeah,
and
that does happen to me.
It's the words start to come, and I think that's my favorite bit.
I can get going, and nearly always I start in the wrong place. Nearly always. I'm off and away, and then I'm like, no. So then I have to go back. And I have to sort of write the beginning. I don't write it again. I just realize that I've started in the wrong place in the story. So then I have to kind of, go back and normally put a chapter or something in at the beginning. And then I'm, where I am. And then I get to about 25,000 words. And then it's just the worst thing I've ever done. Everything's terrible. Every word is rubbish and blah, blah, blah. But I know that once I get through that, then I'm okay.
Yeah.
But but each time it comes, it's a surprise that you're just like, and then you're like, no, we've done this. This is why.
It's ridiculous that it's new every time, isn't it? Yeah.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So I think one of the things I need, because lovely Jenny's here, Jenny Monet, and she said, do you keep a Bible of character details when you write a series? If only.
Sarah is the biggest winger I've ever known. I've never known anyone wing writing like Sarah. She just sits down about 2 weeks before her deadline and writes a book from beginning to end. Wow. I spend 6 months planning the damn thing, and she's just like, I've done nothing. I wrote a book this week. How?
That's amazing. Oh, that's so amazing.
It's not amazing. It's terrible. It's terrible.
It's amazing for those of us who have to live through it.
That's fantastic. Oh.
But it shows that there's no right way to write a book. There is I am the most meticulous planner. I plan every chapter out in advance. Yeah. I have character details for I have character CVs for all my characters, even the minor ones. And it's no wonder it takes me so long to write one, really. But
I just have it all kind of floating around.
I have an outline which sort of is a bit of like a synopsis. And when I think, what's this about again? I sort of go back and, it's that. And I have, the main characters and bits about them and that sort of thing, but not in very much detail.
So you see, there's just so many ways to write a book.
Each
and
of us
people are always asking, how do you write a book? I don't know. You sit your bum on a chair and you put your fingers on the keyboard and you see what happens.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that I needed to plan everything out before I wrote my first book. I actually went into my first one just la 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 la. I'm going to type a story, and it was a disaster. And I had to stop, and because it just doesn't work for me. I can't.
I think it's finding your way, isn't it? Finding what does actually work for you, and like you said, it's different for everybody.
And that's a bit different for each book as well.
Pardon?
It can be different for every book as well.
Yes, yeah.
I'm more meticulous with some books than I am with others, and I'm slower with some books than I am with others. So there just isn't an answer to how to write a book.
There isn't. I write my historical on it. Pardon?
When I stall out and then I'm fiddling around and I'm doing other stuff, and there's not an unwashed pair of pants in the house because I've done every bit of housework there is possible and washed everything again, and I must iron even though I iron about twice a year. There's a reason for it. I get so frustrated with myself, and I'm saying to myself, just sit down and write, just do it, just get on with it. But I know in the back of my head there's a reason why I've not moved forward. And I'm not one of these people that can kind of jump around and think, I'll finish that scene later, I'll move on to the next bit. I'm very, very linear. So it all has to come, even if I know what the ending is or what I'm aiming for, I can't write that and then move back to it. I have to be all the way through it. And I know myself enough now that the reason that I'm tidying up and I'm rearranging the freezer and whatever else I'm doing is because there's something that's not quite right. And
And you have to wait for that
somewhere
to
in the back
appear.
of my
The
head,
subconscious has to try and work it out,
the
doesn't
idea
it?
squirrels are like, come on, the idea's there, and then it will pop out, and then I'll be like, okay, now I know why. And I hate it, but it's just it's what happens in my head, and I just have to wait for you know, my unconscious to kind of work its way through to actually get to the point that I, you know, that then I can move the story forward. And it's always worth waiting for, even when I'm driving myself absolutely bananas about the fact that I'm not moving forward. So yeah, but I do find if I plan too much, then I feel like I've written it, even though I haven't written it. I've kind of written some notes for it.
Oh,
so
I see. Yeah.
And so then I've got no interest in it, because it's my brain is like, well, I've done this. What are we talking about? You know, and I'm like, no, we haven't. We just made a few notes. That's not the book. You can't just go like, look, I've got 4 pages of notes, and you know, that's half the book. So that's it's one of the, you know. So I know some people like
very
Bella
much
Osborne is
depends how your
amazing.
brain
She's got
works.
all her post-its and everything else, and it's a fabulous process, and I couldn't do it because I need to be kind of spontaneous. I need to have the characters kind of talking to me as I'm writing, and then I'm kind of like, oh, okay. And they always tell me stuff that I didn't know. They always tell me stuff that I had no idea, because you think you know these people, and then
sometimes you have
once
to rein them in, don't you?
When you plan.
No, we're not going there. Yeah,
it's like you know, you're peeling an onion all the time, aren't you?
Yeah,
You have to kind of keep.
And even when
going,
you plan very meticulously, there'll always be something that comes up that you weren't expecting to come up. You're like, oh, for God's sake, why are you doing this? You are not programmed to do this.
lying in the bath, you think, oh no, I've now got to do this. Yeah,
No, I know.
What else have we got here? That's quite a question, Fiona. How do you identify when to write a particular story? I guess, like, for me, I've got a really sort of, I've got a plan for all 4 books, but when I say it's a plan, it's like it's about 4 pages of A4 for all 4 books. So it's all vibes. If that's the correct, you know, that's the modern terminology. It's a vibe. So I know what story, I know what order the books are going to come in. So I know how things are going to overall, how that big arc for them. So I know when I'm going to introduce later characters. So like for Mermaid's Point, as I was writing the first book, it became clear to me that Nick needed a book. And he was so insistent that he was going to be like, you know, where's my book? Where's my book? Where's my book? And I was so annoyed with him that I was like, you are waiting till the end of the series. So I think I was. I mean, this sounds ridiculous, like they're real people, but I was like, Nick, you're just doing my head in. You are waiting. You will have to wait to the end. So I'd set him up. I'd set his story up right at the beginning of it, right in that first book. But then I made him wait. Right. I was like, but I knew that that's how it had to be. I knew that that's. I needed to get there, but I didn't know.
You just know, don't you? You know, if, like, for me, I've got this idea. I had this idea for a book maybe last September, and I thought it was brilliant. Oh, what a brilliant idea, I said to myself. Can I make it into a story? Can I, Hell? I cannot make this into a story. And so that doesn't need to be written. I just have to put a pin in that. Maybe one day in the future I'll come back to it. I don't know. But I cannot make it into a story. And that's happened to me before. For me, if it just starts to come to me like that, and the characters are coming and a story in my head, it starts to be written in my head, then it needs to be written. If that's not happening within a couple of months of me coming up with the kind of concept, that's not going to happen.
No, I think I think that happens. Well, with me, that's happened more with standalones. And
I only write standalones, so it's a very all of my books are standalones, so it's a very different process.
I've gone as far as like 33,000 words in with one. That was a couple of years ago, and it's like, this really just is not working.
Yeah.
But I think with series like you, Sarah, I have like it's laid out, not massively detailed, but I know my characters when they're coming in. I will obviously discover secondary characters as the story comes about. But yes, I know at what point that story comes into the series. Yes, I sort of know it actually before I start, when I come up with the idea of the series.
Yeah, I mean, like Love Blooms, that was kind of for Mermaid's Point, I'd originally put in an idea for the first 2 books, and then I'd had an idea for a standalone book as well. And it was only as I was writing the first one that then Laurie's brother Nick was like, well, I need a book, don't I? So then I was like, fine. And then as I started writing the second book, and I was building the second family that come into the books, and I'm going to be like, what the heck's his name? The doctor, the lovely doctor, and his lovely brother. And see, look, I'm so far. Mermaid's Point is gone. But it was only as I started writing that first book, and his brother was sort of there in the background, and so that I was like, oh well, actually, I could put you with that, and I could take this idea and I can find a way to incorporate that into the story. So then that, that was sort of very much as the books were going on. But this time around, I've got all 4 books. I know who they're going to be about. And I kind of had that right from the start. But I've also got sort of some other things that are going on in the background, and some secondary romances and things that come along as I'm writing, that just kind of flesh out the world, and I love those. They're always a surprise when they sort of show up, and you can kind of build the family a little bit more, and you find out more secrets about other people as well. So I do enjoy that.
But I think when writing standalone novels, if if a story is going to work and if it's not, and a concept, the concept of a novel can sound amazing, but it doesn't necessarily make a novel. And I've discovered that more than once.
Yeah, I discovered that with that
to my
one.
detriment.
So
yeah, I think you just know.
You can't. That you've got this idea and you just can't
I'm
find.
a genius.
It's horrible.
I finally got it. This will be
yeah.
my Sunday Times #1. No, it won't. Can't write that. It's not got a story.
That's horrible. That's horrible.
Oh.
Yes, sometimes you just have to let things go, don't you? Because they're not going to work.
Yeah, you do. You do. Absolutely.
Right. We've got about 8 minutes left, so I'm just going to quickly zoom through. I know, hasn't it flown? See,
Life with Sarah always goes quickly.
Good. Right. Let's just whip through. Has anyone ever thought you have based a character on them and want recognition? No, because I don't. I don't really use.
No, I don't think so.
No, I think the only thing I put in my books are, like, my mum will recognize bits of me.
Yeah.
My dad says that. My dad says that. Yeah.
And I always I put a little Easter egg in each book for my mum. There's a little something.
Yeah, I've got one for my dad in every book. There's a sentence or a description
and
or
she'll
something.
Be like,
it's like a family anecdote or something.
Just a little. I always put just a little nod of something that my mum will recognise when she reads it. So, but yeah, I sometimes put
something in for my husband as well, like a joke, an in-joke, or a something that we've done or seen.
Yeah.
And it just happens in passing, and he'll be like, "Oh yeah, I remember that."
Yes, I have had that.
It's lovely, isn't it? Yeah,
not an actual person.
It's fun. It's fun to do that, but I don't. There's no characters who are based on anyone I know.
No, I just think that way is,
except me. I'm like, there's bits of me in all my protagonists.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think it is, isn't it? Because that's
and I do that without realizing. It's usually my dad or my husband that points it out. And then my editor's like, this person is not acting realistically. I'm like, well, yeah, but that's how I act. I'm a nightmare. I can't make decisions. I coast through life. I'm very passive. I never, because like my main characters, like the biggest complaint my editors always have is that my main characters are not active enough in their own lives. And I'm like, really funny. I just sort of go along with everyone else. See what la. So yeah, I think it's almost impossible not to have. In fact, I have a friend who wrote her PhD on the autobiographical nature of commercial fiction authors, and how we can't. It's impossible to write a main character without putting part of yourself in there.
There's got to be some of you in there, hasn't
Yeah,
it?
I think so. And your outlook on the world and your way of dealing with certain situations. And I think that probably does get toned down in the edit when more people, you know, when your editor sees it. But certainly in the first draft, I think that's very true.
Right, I'm just seeing if there's anything I've missed here. Very quickly, we've got 5 minutes left. Alison wants to know, do you have a say on the design of the covers of your books?
No, I don't.
I have some input. I have, we talk about concepts and we talk about ideas, and what I do is, you know, we've put the outline together, and then sort of my editor will ask me for sort of hints and clues and things like that of what I might want to be in it. And this time, because we did something a little bit different, that was a conversation that I had with Sarah, my editor, and said, can we maybe, you know, look at doing something a little bit different with the style of these. And I just wanted a bit more of a sort of a bolder cover. But again, you know, Alice, who designs my books, is amazing. So we actually put a concept together. My editor, you know, we did a sort of a whole new concept for it. And then it sort of showed up. And so then I sort of talked about things. So like, you can see the little puppies that are on there, you know, that was sort of something that I mentioned, you know, so I sort of did little character bios, you know, for who she is and things like that. So that's like a really nice little touch. There's always a little bit that's in there, but you know, I'm not a designer. I'm not, you know, I'm not an artist.
And they do know what they're doing.
They know what they're doing, and they know what sells, and they know how the market changes as well.
You know, I'm not a marketeer. It's not, you know, that I'll leave that to Claire, who's hiding in the background. That's her job, and she gets paid to do that, and she's brilliant at it. So she knows what's going to sell.
You've got to let the experts do their thing, haven't you?
Yeah, we've done our bit. You know, when the cover's being designed, we've done our bit. We have. We've written a story, and I mean, I'm sure if I was ever given a cover I really, really hated, I'm sure if I went back and say I don't want my name on this, I wouldn't be very popular, but I'm sure they'd help me work out what I wanted. Yeah. But for me, they just send a cover and I'm like, wow, every time. So
we had a conversation before we came on about your wow and your
current cover is literally the most beautiful cover I've ever had, and I absolutely adore it. It's down there in the corner.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love my covers. My boardwalk covers are gorgeous, and I love that. On these boardwalk ones, obviously they've got boardwalk in them, but they have a dog on each cover, and I love that I've got three rescues who are actually been
dogs on covers really sell. The book of mine that sold the best out of all of them is the one that's got a dog on the cover.
Oh really? Yeah. You might have got dogs
I don't know if that's a real marketing thing. Claire will be able to tell us. But for me, the book with the dog on, it got in the most shops, it got the most sales. So I need to put a dog in.
It is. Look, there you go, Claire.
Claire said it is. It is a massive seller. So there you go.
Want lots of dogs then, please.
Yeah, so I need to write another book with a dog in it, clearly.
But when I've got, so I think there's 5 dogs in this because it's a big family. So
they've all got a dog each.
So we've got Sooty and Sweep. I'm not very original with my names are. And there's a sheepdog called Samson, and his best friend is a little miniature dachshund who's called Delilah. And then there's a little scruffy Belgian terrier who's called Hercule.
I love that name. I've got a little naughty Jack Russell who actually I can't remember his name though. He's in this. Yeah.
But it's one of those things because it's a big estate and there's lots of land and things like that. It's the ideal sort of place to have, you know,
dogs
running around and everything like that. So, and they're kind of little characters in themselves, aren't they? And they're kind of, you know, they're a really great way to kind of put some action in a scene, or
And it can say something about the owner of the dog as well, because the character that had the dog in this particular book of mine was really, really, really unpleasant to begin with. But he becomes the hero. So the dog was the way to start mellowing him. So the protagonist started to see a different side of him when she saw him with the dog, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think it can tell quite a lot.
Yeah, absolutely.
So well, thank you everybody who came along, and thank you for all your comments. We have been looking, but we've also been chatting so much because it was so easy. Oh no, it's lovely. It was so easy to talk to you guys. And I always think these are the kind of the best versions of these, when you're just having a conversation and you're just sort of chatting about our own experiences and everything like that. So one last time, if you are watching this now or you're watching it later, drop us a comment, say hello, and we'll include you when we're picking out winners. So The Last Party at Silverton Hall and Love Begins at the Boardwalk, they're both available now. And so go and buy them, please.
Audio is out next
and
week.
Where We Belong is out tomorrow. So I just want to thank you both. Have a
lovely publication day tomorrow, Sarah. Have a lovely publication day tomorrow.
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And hopefully we'll see you all again soon. Thanks very much.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye-bye.